Hello everybody and welcome to another hobby cheating video, and today it's time to dominate. Oh, Dominator Engine. We're going to paint another Helsmiths thing. Let's get into it.
The strict technomancer that is Vincey V. Let us get to the technique and learn it, Vincey V.
So I'm continuing with my Helsmiths of Hashut, my Chaos Dwarf army project, and next up on the table is this awesome Dominator Engine. It's like their cool big walking bull golem machine thing. I don't know. It's awesome and I love it. It's one of the figs that really did draw me in to the army. So here's how he looks right now. Basically all I did was prep him up with a little steel and then silver. Okay, so just nice zenithal in metallics. Easy. Now that's, that's effectively, I primed him black, did a little steel and silver, we're good to go. Okay. So what I want to do with this guy, he's mostly metal and I want the army to be mostly this heavy sort of copper, bronzy-ish metallic. And so our easy thing to do here is I'm going to make a mix out of Talos bronze and some of the pigment. Now, I get a lot of questions about can you use the Green Stuff World pigment in an airbrush? And the answer is yes, you can, though you shouldn't use it in an airbrush this small that I'm using here. So I'm using it with a 0.2 millimeter needle, and honestly, don't do that. Use it with like a 0.35 and it'll go through fine. I did have to clean my airbrush after this. Like, it was fine. There's no long-term issues. It just was like a really tough clean. I end up using the bigger airbrush afterward. But all I'm going to do is make that mix and then spray the whole guy down. We're just giving him a good all-over spray. And the pigment really makes the speed paint so much richer. And the speed paint itself as the base, the speed paint metallic from Army Painter, is great because it is slightly translucent. And so it does show a lot of the tonal variation that's underneath it, whereas that added pigment kick we're giving it really enhances the shine. So, I mean, as you can see where this guy comes out, it's just so strong. Like, he's so reflective, he's so bright, I think it looks amazing. But we do need to do a little more to get this metallic under control. We can't just spray the metal and call it a day, where that wouldn't be this channel. We've got to give it a little bit of that non-metallic kick, and that means adding in some shadows. So I'm going to grab a nice dark brown here, and what I'm going to do is just load that up again into the airbrush. You can see still works post-cleaning, and we're going to just go ahead and shoot it from below, right? Easy. And so I work at a low angle coming from up and under the model only, and rotating around that axis to try to get that nice brown tone in there. I also shoot in some of the joints. I work some of the angles, the bottoms of things. Like, I work with the figure to make sure it's that conical spray that comes out of the airbrush is going to catch all of those downward facing planes. That's what I'm trying to hit here. So we reduce the shine on those planes, which will make the top bright planes feel even brighter. But of course, we're not going to stop there. Speaking of brighter, I get out some pure silver. This is from the Wave 2 of P3, and as you've seen in some recent videos, it is one of my absolute all-time favorite new sort of like really bright silver paints. It's also very warm. So I mix that with a little bit of that previous bronze mixture, just a bit to pollute it out and make it a little bronzy. I don't want a pure silver here. And then I just give a nice light dry brush. I work almost all the paint off the bristles. I work these bristles so hard on my mechanics towel till I barely have any paint on there. And then I just give it this very nice light dry brush. So the only thing it's catching on is those very high upward surfaces that I touch lots of times, or the edges. And basically I get nice free edge highlighting all over the whole miniature while still adding a lot more pop and brightness to those upward facing planes. Now, I don't work this dry brush at all on the lower side where I just did the spray. This is upward facing and perpendicular planes only. And the dry brush is coming from up to down. Okay. With that done, we're really kicking. Like, this metal now looks great. And frankly, that's like a lot of the major work on this guy done, because most of him, we'll get to the flame and stuff later, but most of this dude is just a big metal box, right? Okay, cool, great. So now we're going to do the same trick that I do on all of my Helsmiths, which is I take some of this green oxide from Pro Acryl, thin it way down. I use a little bit of alcohol and a little bit of flow improver, so it really has a nice simple flow to it, wicks off the brush very easily. And I go around and I just start tracing every panel line, every recess, every volume change, everywhere where there's a line on this guy. And boy, does he have a lot of lines. I work it, all the little recessed like Helsmith language or runes or whatever that are like imprinted onto this guy. All of that stuff, I just work all of it. It takes a while to go around the miniature, but for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. We just touch it in there. It flows very easily off there because of the alcohol and the surfactant. And so we just nicely create a little turquoise sort of line around every recess, every panel line, every volume change, every panel, everything like that. Okay. Once that's good, the metal is basically done other than weathering, which we will do at the very end. So don't worry, he's a little boring right now, but we'll get there. Okay, let's kick this guy up a notch. So now it's time to attack the flames. He has a bunch of fire licking out of his belly, out of the sort of smokestacks, out of the thing on his back, all of that sort of stuff. So I want to go ahead and make this, I'm going to use this progression here you see of some fluorescence, the same green oxide, and a little bit of purple. Why purple? The purple will mix with the green and create a really nice gray-black color that'll be great for the smoke and the tips of the flames and stuff like that. But before we can do all of that, I have to turn everything white. So I actually grab these white colors here first, and I run over all of the flames, just turn them white. Now I do leave some of the tops, the little smoky bits coming out since that's clearly just smoke. I just leave that black because we're going to hit that later. But I do 2 solid coats of this like sort of whitish mix, a little bit of ink for flow, a little bit of the bright ivory for opacity, and a little bit of the blue to tone it where I want it. And I just give everything a nice coat of all of that. Okay? Turn all those flames white. Get rid of the metallic, get them good. It takes me just 2 solid coats because the metallic's really strong. And it is white over something that's not at all matte paint. Once that's there, now we go to those fluorescents. I'm going to do a little progression here. I'm going to take a yellow-green mix, then the pure green, then the green plus the green oxide, so the fluorescent green plus the darker green, and then the darker green plus some purple. That's the progression. I start by and I'm just going to wet blend this out. You'll see me work a lot of this pretty straight. Okay, so I just go in, start applying that yellow-green with like a nice big brush. Then I start working up the green on top of it. You know, just kind of layering it down. I'll go back to the yellow-green every so often, kind of keep wet blending. I'm just working fast and wet. Fast and wet and loose. Don't worry, we'll fix it all up later. We just need to get that sort of general progression down. From there, I grab some of the next even darker green, start working the tops of the flames, and so on. Right? So I just work this progression. Remember, when you're dealing with flames, you need to run the reverse, where normally our inner areas are the darkest and our outer areas are the lightest, but with flames, it's the opposite. Our inner areas are the brightest and our outer areas are the darkest. Okay? So I just work those. Again, do that nice wet blend, get a good progression. Eventually, I go to that green-purple and just work the absolute tips and then go back to the previous green, wet blend it in, so on and so forth. Okay? So we just work back and forth getting those flames in place. What I then want to do is kind of dial that in a little bit. And so to dial that in, I'm going to go ahead and, I work some of the individual flames, touch them up, go back in, just kind of make sure that there's like flames layered on top, so make sure the tips are darker, that kind of thing. The next step, though, is to go ahead and do some dry brushing. What? Dry brushing? But that's just a newbie thing. We don't do that in a serious paint job. Yes, we do, because dry brushing rules. So instead, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just take first some of the regular, the sort of green oxide mix that I have, that regular green oxide. I'm just going to lightly dry brush that over the upper parts of the flames. Very little paint on the brush. I, again, work the vast majority off on my mechanics towel. Just give it that nice dry brush. Get those touches in there. Start to get that smooth progression. You can blend really effectively with dry brushing when you use very little paint and just guide your strokes. It's no different than layering. You're just, if where you only hit the fig a few times, you're going to get a very light amount of that color. Where you hit the fig a lot, you get more and more and more intense buildups of that pigment. So we're going to effectively layer through the dry brushing by just using lots and lots of applications of back and forth of the brush. Once that's good to go, I then go ahead and take the actual dark sort of purple green mix and I dry brush that over the top. And then, now I again have almost all the paint worked off of the brush, and I'm just hitting, and this is going to perfectly hit the tops, the tippy tops of each of those flames. That gives me that really nice progression. Now, as a point of fact, I do go in after this with just my normal brush and, go in, clean up some spots, work it carefully. I want this guy to look good, so you do have to do a little bit of targeted brush cleanup work, but it's way easier, way faster and way easier than if I had tried to do everything with just the brush. All right, now we need to bring it a little more in tone. So my final step is I'm going to use something that I basically never touch, which is a fluorescent blue. I'm going to take the fluorescent blue, mix it with my fluorescent green, thin it down some, and what I'm going to do now is cover the vast majority of it except of that yellow-green area, everything except the very, the innermost parts where it's supposed to be the hottest. So I'm leaving the brightest part there in the innermost bottom of the flames, top, the innermost parts of the deepest recesses. And the reason I'm doing this, you might say, well, why didn't you just do this originally? Well, because I wanted the yellow there to make it really bright and poppy, and then by laying this blue-green over the top, we get a much brighter tone than if I had tried to go straight to this. It also makes that yellow-green remain as the brightest interior light. So it makes it actually seem brighter, hotter, more intense, and it will make the blue-green brighter by having the yellow underneath it since fluorescent paints are so translucent. So I just do a couple passes around the miniature and we get to a really nice place with that overall color. And I really like how this looks now. The green sits better in line. I had to bring in some blue tones because so much of him is in that, with all the panel stuff, I already have that kind of very bluey green. So we want that to align. Okay? All right. Good. We got that. That's rocking and rolling. Again, this is really the vast majority of the fig done, but there's still a little bit more cleanup. Our next step is we've got to break up some of this bronze. So I'm going to go back in here with a couple of my steel paints, like my sort of magnesium and a little bit of that pure silver again. And I'm just going to work some metal things, like take the chains, the grating that's over his belly fire, stuff like that, and turn it silver. We did the whole thing in bronze earlier, but we need to re-knock a few of those areas into silver to just break up that bronze. We're already doing that some with the flames and with the turquoise, but we need a little more. The reality is I wanted to wait to get to this point. The reason I didn't do it earlier was because I wasn't sure how much I was really going to need. One of the worst things you can do is have a completely sort of uniform thing that's just all one color. The eye views that as very boring, right? We like when things get broken up, have variants, have sort of chromatic and tonal variation in the work. So by doing this, I'm using this to break up that bronze and make it so it's not just all one unified scheme. Simple, not that complicated. It also lets me clean up some of the earlier work from where dry brushing was and stuff like that for those little areas I pick out. Okay, with that done, our last steps are some weathering. This guy, again, we're going to break up that bronze a little more. I'm going to grab basically a verdigris, so sort of a anilic oxide-like thing if you know the GW paint, but I'm just using actually a more traditional verdigris here. I'm going to use some of that and some of the green oxide I used earlier to create some things like some streaks, some additional lines, some lighter tones, some shifts in my overall green tone around to again break that up, create little bits where it seems like this guy has some real weathering and wear. We don't need to go crazy. With weathering like this, less is often more. Don't go over the top. We just want to use it in a few spare places, a couple of edges, a couple of rivets, a couple of lines and recesses and things like that, and we get a really nice look. It adds a lot more punch, it adds a lot more dynamism to that sort of overall green oxide I applied earlier, while also creating more visual interest and variance over the figure. And with that, he's done. Here you go. Here's how he looks. I think he came out pretty cool. Painting this Dominator engine was just a lot of fun. It's a really cool fig. And honestly, every time I paint up one of these Helsmith guys, it just gets me more excited to keep going with additional figures in the future. So if you want to see more, I got a lot more cool stuff we're going to paint in here. It's tough because a lot of them are going to use schemes like this. But I'm trying to figure out different lessons to teach with them and different things to take you through. I don't want to just keep saying the same thing over and over again. But we will do some more Helsmiths figs. So if you liked this, give it a like. Subscribe for more hobby cheating content, including more figures in the Chaos Dwarf range. If you want to support this channel and help me keep making content like this, there's lots of ways you can do so. There's affiliate links down there that don't cost you anything extra. In fact, they usually save you money to pick up any hobby supplies you saw me use in this video. There is, of course, our Patreon focused on review and feedback and taking your next step on your hobby journey. We'd love to have you as part of the community. Around the Vinci Cinematic Universe, of course, there's Fireball the Gazebo, my RPG podcast with Ninjon. That is humming along. Check it out if you're also into role-playing games. And there's Snarlcast, my indie wargaming podcast with Uncle Adam. As a side note, we have just recently released Snarl 2025, our newest zine. We put out one zine every year, and it has a one-on-one mech fighting game in it. So if you haven't seen the other things around Chrome Rangers, check that out as well. But as always, I want to thank you so much for watching this one. I really appreciate it. And as always, we'll see you next time.